How you doing?
Doing good yourself?
Great. How was your vacation?
Wonderful.
How'd you like Key West?
I was going to do it again.
Yeah. It's a little different world down there, isn't it?
Very touristy though.
Yeah.
There's a laid back part of it and there's a touristy part of it too. So
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Everybody wants to go to Key West, you know.
we were on the laid back mentality anyway, so we were fine.
But y'all did, I know you did a little sunset deal and all that crap, right?
We did like a little boat and then we snorkeled.
Yeah.
Place on Duval Street. We were only like a block away from that. We were in a little bed in front of it, so it was real nice.
Yeah, you don't struggle with trying to find a place to get a cocktail down there.
No, that's what I hear.
Or
That's
slushy.
what I hear.
Yeah.
That's like multiple locations per block.
That's right.
In fact, they go out there and they recruit you to come in.
Mm-hmm.
In some of the places.
Oh yeah. What's that place where they the drag queen little place where they'll stand out there. Oh, they stand in the doorway, try to coach you in there.
You can climb or sing by yourself on that one.
Well, I admit, I didn't go in, but I came close.
You heard about it.
Well, you can't help but hear about it. You walk by,
You walk
they're
by.
hollering at you and talking to you and trying to drag you in the door.
That's true.
Have you been down to Cabo San Lucas?
Where?
Cabo San Lucas. It's on the Mexican West Coast.
Uh-uh.
There they really, they literally stand outside every bar. And as soon as you walk by, they are trying to hustle you.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes it works.
Yeah, it does.
How you doing?
Okay, it is 6 o'clock, June 23rd, and this is the first budget workshop for the 2021-2022 budget. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Gamble?
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone?
Here.
Councilmember Brandon?
Here.
Councilmember Prince?
Here.
Councilmember Young? Here.
May I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Mr. Allen, you're going to be making a presentation this evening. Before we start, does the council have any preferences as far as how the presentation goes? You want him to run through the whole thing? Do you want to stop and ask questions section by section? Does anybody have any thoughts on how they would like to proceed?
I like to run through the whole thing.
I agree.
Okay. All right, very good.
Let's-
Just wanted to ask that question.
Mayor, council, I'd be, I guess, mistaken if I didn't thank the staff for their hard work on the budget as well. I know finance, of course, on a daily basis, but the directors and their staff have worked hard to put together this budget. And it is a draft budget. There's some unknowns still. We are still waiting on our projections for our state shared revenues, our health insurance rates. We're in negotiations with the fire union. So there are still some unknowns at this point, but tonight we'll go over the budget. It's not a final version. If you guys have input, we can still make some changes if you guys have some suggestions. Just as a warm-up, I would like to kind of start with American Rescue Plan. I know there's been a lot of questions about it. We still have not received our funds for this. Just as the first slide will show, the state, the money goes to the state, and then for the non-entitlement cities like us below $50,000, the state has 30 days to give us that money. The state's had it for more than 30 days. They have not turned that over to these non-entitlement cities. They have asked for an extension to do that, and so we're still waiting. But with all that being said, to go through this, how we propose to use these funds, the $2.58 million, it's a 158-page document that contradicts itself all the way through. But I know Hughes went through multiple trainings for this, or multiple seminars, multiple meetings. I have as well. We feel like we have a good use of these monies. They are restricted funds. You can only use them in certain categories. And so just as a focus when we consider the use of these funds, really focus on rebuilding financial flexibility, restoring the physical resiliency. We want to avoid new programs and that require an ongoing commitment. We want to enhance budgetary stability and spreading the projects through 2024. And of course, always partner with other organizations to maximize and leverage the city's portion of these funds. So there are 4 categories that you can use these funds in: responding to COVID-19 or its economic impacts, replace revenue lost to COVID due to COVID, and provide premium pay for eligible essential workers, invest in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. And the next kind of the short-term actions that we should take: immediate public health safety needs, support in crisis, replace lost revenue and take further actions, physical sustainability, and then long-term analyze, prioritize programs and services, pursue local partnerships, maximize resources, and make smart capital infrastructure investments. So when we talk about lost revenue, we were able to recognize, and you'll see this throughout this budget process, there's kind of a formula that goes with the lost revenue and how we calculate it. And this was the formula that's in that 158-page document. You basically have a 7.15 expected growth rate. Anything below that, you're able to recognize as a lost revenue. So the first year, we're able to recognize $559,000 in lost revenue for our budget. Year 2 would be 1.1 million. Year 3 would be 1.8 million. Now, we only get 2.58 million, so as you get into those years, you will see that we don't have that money in the budget. So we don't have 1 point or whatever that comes out to, $4 million coming into our budget as lost revenue. So our projected uses for this, and so it's kind of set up almost kind of like a capital plan or a 3-year plan for this. So the first category is invest in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. We have done a number of projects in stormwater this past year and a half, and so our fund in stormwater has been, we'll say, challenged. You'll see that as we go through this budget process or budget presentation, and so we have allocated some funds, or we've recommended some allocation of funds for stormwater projects. One being the Dover Ditch, which has been a conversation since I've been here that needs to be, and that'll be in a partnership with Jupiter. The next category is lost revenue. We talked a little bit about that. The first year we are recognizing all $559,000. Year 2, if you saw on that previous slide, it was $1.1 million. We're only recognizing $871,000 because we have some other uses that's coming through, and you'll see those. And the last one, respond to the economic impacts. We talked about the business forum and helping the business community, and so we have proposed a business liaison to help us with that. That'll fall under special events as well, to help us promote some special events that will help bring people to Tequesta and help our businesses. We have talked about police cars, and instead of going through the surtax and water fund or water utility tax, actually paying for those vehicles outright. That'll help that capital improvement fund, and then the replacement of the fire vehicle. And you'll see in year 2 we have those costs for the business liaison, the business related program, And then we also have the cardiac monitors through the fire department. And then year 3, very similar. So we can come back to those. If you guys have other thoughts or uses for those, we'll be more than happy to take a look at them, make sure they meet those criteria. But you'll see some of that through the budget as we get into it. So just as kind of a recap, I like to do this part of the budget process, just talk about the different types of funds so we don't confuse these as we kind of move forward. You do have your general fund, which is your police, your fire, your parks, your planning, finance. These are programs or funds that are supported mainly with ad valorem, state shared revenues, investment earnings, and charges for service. Then you get into your enterprise fund, which is your water utility, your stormwater utility, your refuse and recycling. Those are enterprise funds. It means they should be business funds. They should support themselves. We shouldn't be using the ad valorem taxes to help support those. I know Matt's done a really good job of leaning forward with those funds and trying to make them sustainable. And you'll see a little bit of that as we move forward too. And you'll see as we move forward, and I know you guys have talked about it a little bit, you know, just the fees that will need to be increased in order to cover those operational costs in those funds because they are self-sustaining. Then we have some restricted funds, which you'll see the capital improvement fund with the $400,000 for the surtax. That's the 1 cent sales tax that comes from the state, and then the water utility tax, the $225. That's an estimate. Those funds are restricted, means they can only be used for certain things, and we restricted the water utility tax to really match that 1 cent sales tax, so that way it's used for those infrastructure projects. The building fund is funded, you know, it should cover itself. It's very much like the enterprise fund, except for they can only be used for the building inspections, those types of things that only support the building department. And as you guys know, Jose and his team have done a great job with, you know, with those projects and in that fund. Special law enforcement fund, this is basically the police department when they get seizure money. They're able to use it for specific things. There is a state statute that governs that. This year, I know the chief has put together almost kind of a capital plan or specific uses for that. So he's kind of leaning forward a little bit that we haven't quite done in the past. We brought it by based on kind of need as the need comes forward, but they are getting some funds in there. We have an officer that's dedicated to a task force, and he's been able to bring some funds in, so it's given the chief some opportunity to lean forward with that, and he'll have some projects that he's bringing to you guys through this budget process. So the annual budget process, as you guys know, the general fund, each year the village of Quest is required to appropriate annual expenditure budget, set the maximum ad valorem tax rate for each year. We are not proposing any tax rates increases. We have a balanced budget. So that means whatever we bring in, we're going to allocate or expend those funds. Just a little bit of just the highlights from this past year. Of course, you guys know the community center is coming online. You'll see some of that debt service that has come online as well. The completion of the advanced meter infrastructure project, that seems to have really helped our department, helped the community, helped the citizens. We went through a little bit of a rough spell with that, but I think we're through that. It's been a great project for the citizens and the village, even though we did go through a little rough time with that. The sand replacement project, we are financing that over 3 years. The Country Club Drive sidewalk replacement, phase 2. So we started that on Monday, the final, I guess, the last trail of that, or last segment of that Country Club project started on Monday. And so really excited about that. I know that's been on the board since I got here as well 2 years ago. The commencement of Northcom operations, we started that a little over last year, but this last year was our first full year. It's been very successful. I know that we probably have a number of stories that we can share that communication with Northcom has really helped our police department, helped out the other organizations as well. The commencement of the accreditation to Questa Police Department, we just recently approved that to get that going. I think that'll really help our department, help with grants, but just really show that, we're doing what the industry standard is, and So I think that'll really help us bring our policies back in line if they're out, and I think they do a great job anyway. So the BLM partnership, as you guys know, we receive funds for patrol in the area, the boat and on land. That's proved to be successful and great partnership with us and the county and BLM and Jupiter and the Colony and Jupiter. We also have entered into an interlocal agreement with Jupiter and the Colony to provide special magistrate services. The continued village-wide sidewalk repairs, we hadn't done any for a long time before I got here. We actually have a plan now, we're moving forward. And then of course the updated capital improvement element comprehensive plan, we did that recently, we submitted that to the state. Quest of bridge sidewalk replacement, that was a $70,000 project, we were able to do that. The dog park improvements, I know we have the sod in and we're still doing a little bit of repair to that, but that's proved to be a very popular project for us as well. Swell restoration projects, stormwater collection system rehabilitation, stormwater lining along Seabrook Road, much needed stormwater projects that we hadn't been taken care of in the past. Drainage improvements, the Tequesta Park tennis courts, pickleball courts, that's been approved. I believe we're starting on that soon. That'll be a huge improvement to that park out there, Tequesta Park, and actually between the dog park, the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, we have a sidewalk going in. This budget year coming up that you'll see, we have a proposed improvement in the park. So we hope to be really trying to move that park in a better direction. Not spend a whole bunch of money on it, but really try to improve it so we can be proud of that. In the highlights with this is just what we, for the employees that we took care of in this last year with through budget and through increases. My favorite is, and I know you guys have asked about this several times, but our fund balance policy, at one point we were close to $1 million under our 2-month operating, to a point where it was kind of scary. We didn't have the money to operate with those funds. This council and previous councils have really taken initiative to make sure that we got that fund back in order, and so we're projecting at the end of this year, if you look all the way to the right, we're projecting a $58,000, I guess, surplus to that fund. We've had some previous conversations since we put this presentation together. We think we can even do better than that. So I'm very proud that we're able to get that fund back, assuming we don't have any major expenses between now and the end of the year. I think we're on a very good track. However, with $1.1 million of rescue funding coming into the budget, that means that 2-month operating target goes up. So I think there's a $200,000 or $300,000 increase to that target rate. So we will have to, while we're there, now that it's like a new goal, the goalposts are moving a little bit, and we're going to have to address that. But so we will still, as we start the new budget year and we receive those funds, we will have to change that target. So the proposed budget, just some highlights, we can go through it. You guys have the line items, but general fund recommended $15 million. Expenditure, the building fund, I won't read through every one of those, but that's kind of the summary of those funds, the recommended that we have on the books now. And if you guys want to take more time and discuss those, we can, but I don't want to read those for you. You guys should have those in the documents. Just a few proposed general fund budgets. So the revenues, our property tax revenue is up 5.3%. We have reduced our admin fees $174,000, and the reason for that is we get admin fees from the enterprise funds, enterprise fund water, stormwater, and building fund, sorry. Well, the expenditures for the water fund are down this year because we have that $1 million meter project replacement project that was on board, and when that changes the calculation, so basically the water fund isn't transferring as many admin fee monies over. So it's a good thing for the water department. They have some additional funds there to use, but on the other side of it takes away from our general funds. That's why you'll see a reduced admin fee there. So We'd also have some reduced investment earnings because of just the market. You know, we're not able to invest and receive that, those investment earnings. The recreation center programs and fees, we anticipate having $46,000 additional, bringing that on. We've done some kind of light analysis of what we think we can do with the center and some program fees with summer camps and the rental of the gym. We do have an increase in the budget right now of $54,000 state shared revenue, and that is basically what we budgeted last year to what we are now. We're $54,000 over, so we've kept it flat. We anticipate the state, when they give us some projections, we might be able to add some more to that than the $54,000. At least I am. Finance is always a little more conservative than I am, but I'm hopeful. Also in this budget is the Jupiter and the Colony interlocal agreement for code compliance. They've asked us for this. You guys have not approved this yet, so this is a proposal. I'm not, you know, obviously we'll have to have this conversation, but we have put it in the budget. You'll see an offsetting cost for a part-time code compliance officer to go with that. So, you know, I don't think that they have a lot of, we'll say a lot of code issues, a lot of code compliance issues, so I feel like the $20,000 and being able to add a part-time person will really help the village of Tequesta. We'll be able to add that service, add that person on our streets to help with code compliance as we move forward. So we'll evaluate that process as you guys give approval for that. If you guys give approval for that, we'll look at that. So currently in the budget, we have PBA 3% by contract. IFF, we have it right now, just their steps at 3%. Obviously, we're in negotiations with them, and we'll see if we have to make a budget adjustments at that point. The CWA is 3.02%, and the non-union is 3%. So pretty close across the board, 3%. Health insurance increase, we have a placeholder in there of $176,000. As we get those fees, hopefully we'll be under that, and we'll be able to recognize some of that savings. We did have a decreased employer contributions for the pensions of $77,000, and then as you see in this budget, the $85,000 all inclusive for that business liaison person. Code compliance salaries, we talked a little bit about that. In the budget is $30,000 for ball field improvements at Tequesta Park. Corridor master plan that you guys recently discussed to put out an RFQ for, we have budgeted $100,000 for that project. Hopefully it comes in under, but currently just want to have that placeholder. Some of the new expenses, I mean, you saw the personnel costs, health insurance. Also, you know, we have the rec center coming online, $345,000, the debt service for the sand project. So some major expenditures that we had come online. And so you'll see that those rescue funds helped us with that. Capital projects, police vehicles, $218,000, the fire command vehicle, and then you'll see the transfers from the capital fund, from the American Rescue Funds for village-wide improvements. So as part of the capital plan, you know that we have $255,000 allocated for that. With these use of this rescue funds, we plan on sending another $359,000 over to roads. So this year, we anticipate spending $614,000 on roads. I know roads have been important for the council, and so that's where we put those monies. Obviously, if council wants to look at some other things, we can, but we'll have to make sure it fits the criteria of the American Rescue Funds. Let's see. Just kind of where our revenues are coming from. You got the rescue funds at 7%, $1.1 million. Your admin fees are your fees that we collect from building, stormwater, and water funds over to the general fund for the use of our services like HR, finance, IT. Your charges for service are your Palm Beach County Fire, Jupiter and the Colony, the contract fees that they pay us to provide those services. Intergovernmental revenues, which would be like your state shared revenues, things of that nature. If I'm missing any, you guys throw in, but so you'll see that. Your proposed expenditures, I mean, these are just kind of how the pie breaks out when we start talking about what the expenditures are in this budget currently. And so you have your percentages. You'll see a big part of it is the salary, wages, and employee benefits. That's not uncommon for any municipality. I mean, most of your costs, probably most organizations, most of your costs are always gonna be in your personnel costs. Just a breakdown by department, and some of the changes, you'll see most of this is probably personnel costs as you go through it. I won't read through every one of them, but we can definitely circle back to them if you guys would like. Just kind of a fun breakdown, millage by department, and you'll see the 6.629, that's how each department is broken down. And then kind of just a fun way to look back at you know, our personnel cost and capital outlay and operating expenses over the years and where we are now. And, you know, it's a little deceiving because we have an influx of that $1.1 million to show that this year and where we compare to the last couple of years. So it's a little deceiving with that $1.1 million in there, but I always like to look at it and see where we're going and where we've been. Just where we stand on the millage rate, you see the last couple of years we've had a steady millage rate. We plan on keeping this, at least currently. It's at the will of the council, but we plan on keeping the millage rate the same. But you'll see that we've had a steady millage rate over the years. Even before that, the 5 years before that, we had a very stable millage rate. Just where we stand within Palm Beach County, the millage rate as it stands now, I mean, you see we're right in the middle, 22 out of 39. It's pretty close to where we always kind of hovered, is right there in the middle. So all other funds, just to kind of go through, so we got our building fund, just a little bit of a breakdown. Their building fund is $674,000. We will use some of the reserves out of the building fund to cover operating. $170,000. As you know, we have $800,000 or give or take in that fund. We can only use for the building fund, and so taking $170,000 out of there, that fund is still very healthy. Net positions, and we don't call it reserves, I'm told, in these funds. We call it net positions, but these are net positions in those three funds. As you can see, our stormwater fund and our refuse and recycling are basically have dwindled down, and most of it you'll see is the expenditures that we've done in the last year and a half in that stormwater. So that's why we're going to supplement some of the stormwater fees projects with the rescue funds to help bring that up. We also have planned increases for refuse and recycling. 2 years ago, we passed an agreement with Waste Management, and part of that is there was some fee increases in there. The last 2 years, we didn't do any increases because we had some reserves. This year, we're going to need to go up by contract to try to match that. I think it's 3.5%. The estimated budgets for those three programs, or those three funds. And out of that $12 million, you'll see in that budget that there is projected, and I know we've went over this at some point, may have been brief. We do have a plan to borrow some money for the water fund of like $4.4 million. And so out of that $12 million, $4 million is going to be capital projects that go and help us really get caught up with some of those water projects. Of course, that's always at the will of the council. Just the highlights in the water utility fund. We do have a proposed increase of 5% in the water utility rates, according to the study that I think they were here 2 months ago. They brought that. And then some of the upgrades or plans that we have for the water utility fund, the $1.3 million for the energy resource improvements, water main replacement program, the water main replacement program on Beach Road, and then the piping, filter vessels, piping 35, and filter media replacement. So those are the projects coming. The refuse and recycling, like I mentioned, we will have to do an increase for the user fees for that. And we're matching the proposed increases is matching the contract fee, so we're not arbitrarily picking a number out. Stormwater utility, proposed increase of 5%. The decrease And 17.5% of operating from previous years is due to the completion of the major drainage improvements. We also have $150,000 using the rescue funds in that for this coming year. Some other governmental funds, the capital improvement fund is used to account for infrastructure, surtax proceeds, and of course the capital projects fund account for major capital improvements such as the rec center was, you'll see the funds that have come out there. So those are the budgets for those three funds. You'll see that $104,000 for the Special Enforcement Trust Fund. That is the proposed expenditures that the chief has out of the $104,000. He has $104,000 planned to use those funds this year. Just kind of a breakdown of the capital, 5-year capital by department. I have a $75,000 project, but it's really not mine. That's a tree canopy enhancement project that the environmental committee has brought forth. So we have placed that in the capital projects to do that over time. I think it's in the year 23 or 24. And so you'll see the breakdown. A big part of what we're doing is water and the projects we're doing for that. So just kind of a breakdown of the capital improvement plan by year. You'll see this year the Tahoe, the road improvements, the 359. You'll also see a 255. Of course, the patrol units, and then we have a sidewalk improvement plan project planned on South Tequesta Drive, Seabrook Road to Venus. That is also planned. So the next steps in the budget, of course, this is just the first discussion that we've had on the budget. We'll have more depending on what the need is. We'll be getting those state shared revenues, getting the health insurance rates. We'll beginning continued negotiations with IFF. Once we get all that together, of course, then we'll bring a budget that we can pass. We plan on having additional workshops in August. And so departments will continue to look at different ways of savings depending on how those other factors play in. Palm Beach County appraisal, certified taxable value is July 1st. So what we have now is kind of an estimate. They'll certify those values. The Florida Department of Revenue released the state share revenues June to mid-July, probably more like mid-July. They always say they're going to, and then they keep backing up the deadline, at least my experience. So, so just kind of the full circle that kind of goes with that previous slide. June, August, we'll look at, hold some workshops, and then you have your first public hearing adopting the tentative millage rate in September, and then the second public hearing, I think we got another little slide, has those tentative dates. And those are pretty tight when we get around September, just the requirements that, and we got Palm Beach County schools and they have hearings, so I think we have those dates set. We say tentative, we'd like them to be a lot more permanent, but those are the dates that we're shooting for. With that, I believe that brings the end of my presentation, but we're here, we can answer any questions you have. If you want me to go back to some slides, we can do that. If you have questions with any other departments, we can do that. It's however, Mayor, you want to handle this, we can do that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the presentation. You guys did an excellent job in putting this together. So I'm going to open it up for council discussion, questions. Who would like to start? Bruce, I'm looking at you.
You always do.
Not always. Sometimes I look at Molly.
You're afraid of what I'm going to say. Well, there's a lot of information there, to kind of, if you don't deal with it on a daily basis and stuff, it's a little bit overwhelming sometimes when you start trying to, put your head around all the different sources of revenue and cost and stuff like that. It's and I'll kind of commend you as well, on what a great job your whole team has done in putting all that together, the numbers and stuff. They look good. It looks like we made some improvements and stuff with it. It's nice to see that the reserve is going to be caught up, presumably so, on the track and stuff that we're going on, which is a big deal for me, to have that taken care of and not have that burden of that additional, cost there on us. But it looks like it, I've done a super job, and that's basically what I'd like to say first of all.
Okay. Lori?
Not much right now. Like he said, there's a lot of information. But I like the layout of it, thank you. You did say that we are buying outright the police cars, yes?
That's the plan
Okay.
with the rescue funds, we would purchase
Buy
those
them out.
with those rescue funds outright. Yeah.
Okay. Right now, that's all I got.
Okay.
As I digest.
Kyle?
Since we're talking about the police vehicles, I know that we've been talking the last couple of years about setting up the lease program so that we have this reoccurring kind of expense that is more sustainable to maintain on a yearly basis and not getting hit with 10 police cars all at once. So help me understand why we want to go back to maybe purchasing 4 versus maybe 2 this year and 2 next year.
Oh, I'll say partly is that fund, the capital improvement fund has, you know, we've taken on some expenses, especially with the debt service with the rec center. So to really help us along to, I guess, reset that fund, the 218 up front really helps us. We also will have a 2-year break from those police cars. So once we do that, we would have had the whole all 13 cars have been replaced at that point. So we'll have a 2-year break before we got to start that process again. So it really helps that fund as we do that, and also helps with some savings, some interest. So Hugh's helped me. If you have anything to add to that, you can just jump in here.
So in 3 years, we would go back to maybe leasing another vehicle or 2?
Yeah, we'll go back to the 4 process, because the idea is that they're a 5-year replacement program.
Right.
So all we're doing is jumping out there,
Get ahead of it.
using those rescue funds, because it's a lot of use.
Right.
Using that and kind of getting in front of that.
Okay.
Leaning forward a little bit.
I noticed that you have the property tax revenue up 5.3%, but in the spreadsheet, you only put 5 in the percent change. Is that just sandbagging a little bit?
Yes, Vice Mayor, the percentage change for the spreadsheet is 4.8, roughly 5%. That pertains to the increase in the taxable values.
Okay.
And however, the revenues itself increased by 5.3%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The 20,000 for the code compliance for the Jupiter Inlet Colony, adding that, do you know if we can also do, the building department can be added? You know, is that something that they would also be interested in doing, utilizing our building department and skills that our team has?
So I have broached that conversation with their administrator. They're pretty happy with they have a contract person over there, so it's not in-house, so I don't think that they feel like their expenses are over the top with that. They have a contracted person, where with the code compliance personnel they actually had police doing code compliance, and they didn't feel that was a great fit, so that's why they were looking to make that change there. And so I've talked about those services. I mean, who knows what the future will hold. I mean, if we have a partnership with fire now, if we do code compliance, I mean, we'll just see. We have a really good relationship. As you guys know, it even goes back, years. And so I think if there's potential there, they'll be more than happy to stick their hand out.
I'm concerned about the 100,000 that's left in the stormwater at the end of the next year. That'd be a concern of mine. I think that's you think that's enough, Mr. Prince over there?
Not really.
How many projects is that?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, but if that's all we got, it's all we got. But, I mean, we can spend a lot of money on stormwater, or all of it for that matter.
What if something were to happen, we do have reserves over there, just in case for an emergency?
Just at 96,000.
Just at 96,000?
Yeah.
But didn't we put 500,000 into kind of like a storm emergency fund?
Hurricane.
Hurricane
For
fund?
a hurricane, yeah, if we had something like that.
So we could
And
utilize that?
I think we've, even through legal, we've talked about that being an emergency fund, not necessarily a hurricane
let's keep-
emergency fund. So
right.
if something happened, we probably could pull into that. I mean, I think we'd be creative.
Okay.
We have a positive cash flow
Mhm.
that we'd be creative with that.
Okay.
I think it is a situation that has raised eyebrows. I know, Matt and I have talked about it a couple times, and that's why we really wanted to use these rescue funds. we spent almost $800,000 in the last, and it might be more than that, but I'm just ballparking it, in the last, year. So that's why we're in that situation. We've had some emergency repairs that have required that. It's not like, something we fell asleep at the wheel. It was some, maybe if we didn't do proper maintenance going back years, but it was just something that came up as emergency. So we will work to, we plan on bringing you guys those fee increases or those fee changes. And so he has a long-term plan with those fee changes that will help us get that fund back.
Do these emergency funds that are coming from the federal government through the state, is that going to prevent or create an issue 3-4 years from now, where we've kind of gotten used to spending some of this money now, or do you think this is kind of just a nice help, get us to that next stop, the next point, a little bit faster?
Well, they always say a perfect storm is when, everything lines up, and usually when you're talking about perfect storm, it's usually always negative.
Seems to be pretty good.
I think we have a perfect, I don't know what you call the opposite of perfect storm,
Yeah.
but, with sea glass coming on in a couple of years, that additional revenue will help, I guess, supplement the rescue funds when they go away. So, I think, we do need to lean forward and make sure that we're not outspending ourselves. That's why with these rescue funds, we really want them to be one-time expenses. We didn't want them to be something that was gonna, hit us in 2 years that we're all of a sudden we're on top of that. So, it is on the radar. We don't want to get in that situation, but I think it's the perfect storm in a positive way with sea glass coming online that will really help us. So.
I think it's just important to point out that the property tax revenue, we're estimating a 5.3% increase, is only adding $410,000. To me, that's kind of like, whoa, you would think it'd be more than that? So that's, yeah.
Well, Sea Glass will add, what, $500,000 a year?
Depends on how the appraisal district, of course,
Well, that-
appraises that value. I mean, we think it's gonna be a little more than that, probably $750,000.
No, that's great.
But, only time will tell, but we feel like we know what they sold those units for, and depending on how the appraisal district values that, will determine that, but we think closer to $750,000.
Well, that'd be a good, nice annual increase.
So that's what I say, that increase will supplement this, next year's $1.1 million, the $500,000 we're putting in, and we do have some costs coming. Obviously with personnel costs, with health insurance costs, with the rec center coming online, and we have costs. I mean, so just being, I think, we've really laid the groundwork the last couple of years of leaning forward and looking long term, and I think that will continue to help us as we continue to look a couple of years out and not just be, what's good today, what's going to work for us in a couple of years. So we, and you guys have seen it, we have a 5-year projections, that really helps us look forward and look out. So we feel like we're in a lot better spot than what we were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that landlocked municipality not being able to add additional revenue sources because of construction, and the costs continue to exponentially increase to the point that right now in the next 3 years, we're not gonna have an issue, but more like 10 years, and that's just where my mindset is.
Because we don't have any more land hardly, left to develop.
To get lucky like a sea glass.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Hey, what was the cardiac monitors for like $120,000? It seemed like we did talk about those at one point at some time, but I was just kind of curious. I couldn't recall.
So they were probably, if you recall any capital improvement plan that we've had in the past, and they're still on there, they were like $40,000 a year. We had like 3 consecutive years where we were gonna spend that. Because we have restricted use on that, we just wanna go ahead and take care of all 3 of those at one time. So they were $40,000 a year. They're getting to, I think we still have probably a year or 2 till we get there, which is why they're not this year, they're next year. But then they need to be replaced, and so they're for the fire department.
Yeah. Okay.
How long do those live? Lifespan on that?
The chief has told me, I think anybody, maybe, no, the chief is here.
Yeah.
Good evening, council. So cardiac monitors are, at this point, are going to be almost, I think they're 8 years old now. They typically have a life expectancy of about 10 years. Just like any other technology, things improve, and you can only keep up so long before you have to replace the whole line. So that's.
Well, at my age, I'm an advocate of those things, never know when I might need one.
That's true.
It is the critical piece of equipment that we carry on those ambulances.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from the paramedics, of course.
Absolutely.
How many of those do we have?
We have 3.
So 3 of those, wow, unbelievable.
It's like that old MasterCard commercial. When you need it, it's priceless.
That's right, exactly.
Absolutely has to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Al, you got anything else you want to touch on?
The only thing, I mean, I think you guys did a great job putting it all together. Thrilled about the fund balance getting back to where it should be, so great job.
Yeah.
Molly?
I have a couple questions. On the water treatment plant upgrades and energy resource improvements, I was curious, do we know what any projected long-term savings are from these improvements, especially from the energy resource work?
So that project, the preliminary design of that is going on through the summer. So those, as far as the savings, potential savings from that, those aren't finalized yet.
Is there a goal?
As much as possible. No, it's I guess what went into it is identifying the cost-effective improvements. If adding variable frequency drives to a certain pump station is going to save us $5,000 a year in energy savings, but it's going to cost us $200,000, and our return on investment is, whether you want to do simple return or discount it, is 50 years, and it's 3 times the life of the equipment, then that doesn't make sense. And so it's looking at the value of those and where the village is going to long-term come out ahead. So no, there's not a specific goal other than identify what is cost-effective and going to be the best solution long-term.
So I guess that's what I was getting at. And of the 1.3, how much of that is for the review, the study that you're having done right now?
How much of that?
Well,
That's
it's
construction cost only.
for the energy and resource improvements?
Mm-hmm.
So the current year budget, we have paid for those plans or those.
Oh, okay, that's already
Correct.
underway. So this is kind of for what you're estimating if we proceed with any improvements, if that's
That's
what it'll
correct.
be, but we don't really have the data yet.
Right.
Okay. And then, refresh my memory, and I apologize, I did look at, I think it was 2 council meetings ago. I thought the proposed increase was 3.5%. Or was it like 5 initially and then 3.5 after that? I was looking at the presentation from 2 council meetings ago.
The water rates, I think she's referring to.
Yeah, the water, the increase percentage in water rates.
Yes, I believe you're correct. The 5-year, but I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank to be able to tell you
Okay.
100% right now.
Maybe we can just follow up on that,
Mhm.
because it says 5 on here. Another question on the investments. I know we've talked about this. You guys pulled money out of investments because of COVID. Is there any idea when you would put more money back in and when that revenue would start coming in?
I don't think that works that way, so we keep pulling it.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve, it's a lot of anticipation in that there is an expectancy that they're going to increase the target rate towards the end of next year. Right now, we have investments with the State Board of Administration, which at the start of the pandemic, we pulled back because a lot of those investments were commercial paper, which we felt were a little bit, were somewhat riskier. And so when the market picks back up, we will send some funds back up to the SBA, which typically have a higher rate of return than the bank. We're with TD Bank now, significantly lower than the SBA. So I would say within the next year, we expect to see the rate spread start trending back up.
Okay. And then just two other comments is, I personally think budgeting something for Remembrance Park is important, especially since we got the $50,000 grant for it, which, did we find out when that expires, that grant?
I forgot to ask Greg. Greg, you know when that grant?
2 years.
When did we start that?
So I think it's 2022. So we got it a year ago. So we're in 21 now, so I think it is, so we have a year left. We're in the first year now, and then we're in the fiscal year, so.
So I think that's important to talk about. And then also to Quest Fest as well.
So Ms. Young and I have had this conversation, was that yesterday? Everything's a blur.
Yes.
A little bit about just the leisure funds and Tequesta Fest. So, you know, we've done Tequesta Fest successfully for a number of years now, prior to me getting here. The costs have went up slightly every year. This past year, the person who typically supplies our rides for us has retired, so he always gave us a great deal. He loved Tequesta. The last quote that we got for to do Tequesta Fest was like $81,000, which is up about like $30,000 from the norm. So I have not budgeted fully for Tequesta Fest. We left the budget, I think, at $60,000. I really struggle with spending $81,000 for 4 hours worth of rides. I know it's probably a love-hate relationship with Tequesta Fest. There's a lot of people that love it and do really well with it. You know, some people come and, you know, stand in line and, you know, they may not be as happy. I know it's a very popular event. You know, Greg and I have talked about maybe just, you know, taking that money and using it and doing some smaller events, or, you know, improve what we're doing, you know, around with some of the other special events. So at this time, I haven't fully funded Tequesta Fest. If we wanted to do that, it'd probably be another $20,000. I think you know, my recommendation, and I think Greg would agree, is to take those funds and maybe do two or three smaller events and just have more events than do that. Or we could, you know, really try to shape that event, maybe not with rides, but maybe we have some kind of festival or something, but it'll be within that $60,000 range instead of the $81,000 range. So that's Ms. Young and I's conversation was on that. I think I've had the same conversation with the mayor as well, but I'm open to what you guys feel is the best approach, but I really struggled with fully funding that.
Well, I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that I've never been to the Tequesta Fest before. Of course, I don't have any children or anything like that down here. Mine are all grown. But that's free, right, for the public?
For residents.
For residents. You know, when I was a kid growing up, not to get a little philosophical here, but, you know, it was a big deal when the fair came to town. And I used to pick up, you know, bottles and stuff and pick up pecans and sell my pecans. And so it was a big deal, you know. I'd cut grass and make money any way I could, you know, to go to the fair, because, you know, it was like, it was there for a week, though. I mean, it was a big deal. And some of my fondest memories are as a child, and I still tell stories about that, about going to the fair. And I don't know, so I mean, I'm going to kind of encourage you a little bit. Let's look into doing that, even if we had to charge, because we had to pay to go to the fair. It wasn't open. It was a minimal amount of money back in those days, but you had to go in there and you bought tickets and stuff, you know, and it wasn't a free ride, which I commend the city or the village, you know, for being able to make that a free event. But I think that maybe people would not be opposed to subsidizing the cost with a little fee of some sort to offset that additional cost, especially if they were understanding of the, you know, the additional $30,000 or whatever it came out to be above and what you're accustomed to doing. But, you know, I'd like to try to look at maybe trying to continue to do it if we can.
Not to mention, where would we have it?
Well, the owner of the property has said,
Yes.
she's committed to allowing for chili cook-off and Tequesta Fest this year. So that being in November, this budget year is what we're talking about. And, you know, who knows what the future holds for that park, but for this particular budget year that we're talking about, she said that she would allow us to have it.
Well, I mean, one of the benefits has been that we, as you all know, we've had the chili cook-off, so the fencing and everything's already been put into place, and we've been able to leverage that. And as the manager said, we spoke about it as well, and you know, if you look at Tequesta Fest, how it's evolved from where the first time I went, which was, I guess, like 2006 or maybe, or 7.
Used to be like
It's really, it used to be out here on the Village Green. It's really evolved through the years, and it's kind of gone through different phases. One year we had it over 2 days. We used to have, you know, music acts playing on a stage. So what I'd said is maybe we need to kind of, and when I say we, I mean really not necessarily us, we can provide suggestions, but staff could really look at, is there a way to reimagine Tequesta Fest in a way that, you know, kind of keeps, as you're saying, that community event, and yet maybe makes it a little more cost effective, and if that means charging or maybe cutting back on the rides or doing some different kinds of things, because it is something that, you know, everybody does look forward to at that time of year. So I'd like to see it continue in some form. I guess the question is exactly what form does it take?
Well, you could certainly, I think, manage it in such a way so that we could reduce the cost and figure out a way to charge for certain parts of it rather than making it 100% free. I mean, if I was a young, you know, father with children again that would want to go to something like that, you know, that I would certainly want to set aside some money to allow them to be able to go and participate on something like that, and wouldn't mind paying something to be able to take my kids and stuff to be able to experience the bullet and the double-wheeled Ferris wheel and all that stuff that we used to have at our fair and stuff. We used to have one of those little things that had a little round ring on it and had all these little colors and stuff in it, had a little hole in it. And you could put a nickel on there and a rat, whatever, they'd put a rat out there in the middle, and whatever hole he ran into, you'd win your money and stuff on it. I mean, I still remember all that stuff. That was a lot of fun, you know, but they don't let you do that stuff down here in Florida like we do that up here in Georgia. But,
They did in Okeechobee.
oh, and I kind of got it figured out. The rats would they kind of favored certain colors, and it was like the darker colors, the blue and the greens and stuff. You studied it long enough, you know, you could figure out what color they were going to go on to on a higher percentage basis. And I guess it felt like a little security to them running in that darker colored hole. But anyway,
So you found the edge.
yeah, I did. They kind of cut me off. They wouldn't let me play it because I'd hang out there all night long.
But the point is that he had a lot of fun playing the game. That was unique.
That's really the point I'm trying to make. But, you know, if we lose that property up there, which eventually, you know, at some point in time, something's going to happen to it. We don't know what that's going to be, but you know, we're going to have to look around if we did want to continue to do it, where we would hold it in the future. You know, the property out there on County Line Road, he struggled with selling that, and it's a lot less expensive than what we're potentially looking at for Paradise Park. I know it doesn't have some of the features and stuff that the current place that we've been using does, but you know, it would certainly be an alternative spot to look at potentially either buying or renting or what have you until he eventually does something with that. Doesn't have an asphalt parking lot, but you know, when the fair that I went to, it was Bahia grass. I mean, we didn't have any asphalt, no concrete. It was all out there, and you know, sometimes they had just got through mowing it, and so the cow patties and stuff were still kind of spread around a little bit out there, so you had to kind of kick those around a little bit too. But we endured all that and created some great memories out there doing it.
Molly, did you have anything else you wanted to?
No.
Okay.
Or just real quick, since we're on
yes,
Tequesta Fest,
yes.
I think we should absolutely do Tequesta Fest this year, and find a way to make that happen, even if it's charging a little bit for residents and a little bit more for non-residents. It is something that is, I think, very special to the community, and I think we should use this year to come up with the next concept.
I think there seems to be an agreement on taking that approach.
I have one more question
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
want to finish.
No, go ahead.
Was this your next question tying into Tequesta Fest?
No, go ahead.
Okay. In reference to the business liaison, would that be a new position overall? Like a whole new person? Is that not something that the chamber basically does? And they're looking for a new person as well.
No.
So it would solely be a position dedicated to just working with our businesses?
So, you know, and I think with this position, potential position, you know, I think we set realistic expectations for this this position. You know, I think the chamber is a whole different situation than what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is, you know, as a person dedicated to, you know, communicating with our businesses, you know, getting the messages out that we're trying to get out, trying to do some special events that are very business centered around. So, you know, maybe it's Taste of Cuesta or whatever, some things that really bring our businesses together and showcase our businesses. I mean, the chamber isn't gonna come run our events for us.
I understand that, I just wanted to,
I think the chamber, there's a lot of value that our business could use from the chamber that they don't. You know, we've had those conversations, the chamber has been to our business forums, we're gonna have another conversation about the business forums at the future workshop, but it's a little different, and I think, you know, I think the value that that person can help with Greg through special events and offering more opportunities through our, you know, through our food truck stuff, through our, you know, through our music in the park or movies in the park, be able to offer opportunities for businesses to either, you know, sponsor them, show up and do events. I mean, this business liaison person can be that communication point, be somebody that we don't have. As you know, our rec staff is very, very limited now. I think he would add some value not only to our businesses, but our special events, which in turn will help our businesses. So it's kind of a full circle. So I think there's a lot of value in this position. That's why, and the funds, you know, they gotta be very specific. And since it does help businesses, and that's the intent, we can use those funds that way.
okay, just as of right this moment, I'm hesitant on the $83,000 for it, because knowing that kind of position, and then the lack of participation we've had recently from businesses, you know, they're not gonna put forth a little effort as well into someone who's running around trying to include them and get them help, but it has to be a give and take, and that number right now is
So the number,
not sitting well with
number
me.
is, I think the salary is 55,000, and then of course all the benefits, so that's where you get the 85, so it's not an $85,000 salary, 'cause then you talk
I know, but
about-
just overall,
Yeah.
the number 83 is,
That's not out of line of what a similar position in the village would be doing. You know, I think we have a rec position, we try to compare it to some of the positions we already had, and that's where that position fell as far as salary. I'm open, as you know, with the rec center coming on board, there's a lot of responsibilities that we don't have anybody to do over there. I mean, so this person will help with some of that as well, at least be able to take some of the special events away from, you know, Greg and his staff that they're doing now, because those staff are gonna be, you know, doing a lot with the rec center. So I think it's important that we really have that conversation. Of course, you guys will have to approve that position ultimately, but if we don't approve that position, we're probably gonna need to, out of the general fund, have to fund the position for over there.
that's
So-
fine. Just literally me hearing it tonight, I mean, it's on my radar. Obviously, as we get more details as to what they will be doing, I definitely, for me personally, wanna make sure it's a position that's worthwhile and not just adding something we could put that fund somewhere else.
I think, in my opinion, since it is coming from American Rescue Funds, like, it's been really important to me from day one that, you know, obviously we're gonna recoup our losses and stuff is gonna potentially go into infrastructure, but I thought it was really important, since we're getting these funds, to put them back in the community, whether it be to benefit the residents or businesses. So I kinda like it from that standpoint. And then I think their role would be much broader too than just working with our current businesses. They could help with recruitment, you know, as well, and showing businesses why they should come here, you know, broadcasting empty, you know, tenant spaces to lease. They could be the conduit for us to the chamber. There's so much more I think the person would do than just, you know, work with the
Like an
current
EDC
businesses.
position too, as well, an economic development type gal or guy, but no.
I mean, they're gonna pay more. But
Well, no, I'm saying that they can kind of double in that position and stuff and pick up some of the responsibilities that, say, an EDC would, you know, partake in.
But I think one of the key elements that you touched upon is their involvement with the Parks and Recreation area too. I mean, it's not just business focused, because we have so many special events that we coordinate through Parks and Rec, so they would be intimately involved in that.
Absolutely.
And they would be working with Greg's staff and in the development and planning, et cetera. Obviously, then business can come alongside those events, but I think, as the manager said, if we don't have somebody in this kind of dual function role, we're going to be in a situation where we're clearly going to have to add some staff over at Parks and Rec. So this is a way to accomplish that objective, I think, and then use the rescue funds to help offset that cost.
So we'll bring this back for, we'd have to bring it back to you guys
Yep.
for approval anyway, but we'll have some future conversations to help make sure that everybody's on board with it, and we all believe this is the right thing to do for,
Yep.
these funds. So-
Agreed.
I'll just add a couple little history too. So as a business owner here, I started out with the Tequesta Business Association and tried to get involved with that. That was lacking someone to take the reins and run with it. And then we went on to Hope Sound Chamber. That was lacking support from down here, someone taking the reins and running with it. Now we're kind of with the chamber. Again, all the businesses are busy and they would love to know about the different events, like the buy local event. You go to them and, oh, I didn't know anything about it. Well, we emailed you. I missed it. And if you just go talk to them, love to participate. And that little interaction is, I think, will just go a long way for someone to help kind of drive this. That's one issue. The other issue is the bridge being closed in a year. I think having more focus on our local businesses would only benefit both the businesses and the residents.
Well, the community that I came from up in Central Florida, we actually hired a gal up there to do exactly what you're talking about doing, and she, was really a benefit to the. It was a very small community too, very similar in size to the village of Tequesta, and she had a good impact, on helping the businesses and stuff, and also in recruiting some people to come in there and fulfill some of the vacancies and stuff that we had there in the city, which benefited everybody in the long run. But it worked out for us up there, and and that's been probably a few years back when I was involved with that. I was actually on that committee, and she helped out a lot, and she was that expensive. I mean, more expensive than that back then. So I think that the rate that you're looking at to get somebody in that position is really a fair salary, for someone that can actually get in there and make stuff happen. Of course, obviously, it's always important to find the right person to do that, but that's always difficult. But sometimes you get lucky.
Molly, did you have anything else you wanted to? Okay, I just wanted to, just a couple of things. First of all, again, thank you, Jeremy, the whole staff for putting this presentation together. Like I said at the outset, you guys did a great job. I appreciate all the comments my fellow council members have made as well. I think everybody's made some very good points. Just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Sustainability, and I'm not talking about green here. I'm talking about financial sustainability, which the Vice Mayor hit on, I think is so critical to our long-term future. I think the fact that, as you've said earlier, we've targeted expenditures that aren't embedded in recurring. We've targeted things that, for the most part, are one-time things, so we're not going to have an inflated budget as we go forward is critical. We are fortunate that we have a few developments, as you mentioned, Sea Glass coming online. We've got the proposal for the Mastriani building. We've got the proposal for the reserve. I don't know if Austrade, was that factored into the revenue element here?
Not for this year.
Not for this year.
Next year.
Okay, so we've got Austrade that'll come in play. So we do have those opportunities going forward. And as we've talked about before, when we look at where sustainable revenues are going to come from, and I don't think there's any appetite on this council to raise taxes, it's going to come from redevelopment. And we have a limited commercial opportunity, so that will help, obviously, as we've already identified a number of projects. But when you look at the ad valorem, the other thing we've got to factor in here too is that we have gone through a cyclical change in this village with the influx of families. So we've had a lot of turnover in that housing stock over the last few years, which has benefited us because it's reset the property values at a higher number. That tends to be a cyclical event. And I think as we go forward, we shouldn't anticipate we're going to see that same kind of turnover in the future. So we're going to be in a situation where people homestead, we're going to have that maximum of 3% kicking in. So that's what's going to constrain us. So it gets back again to the redevelopment opportunities, whether it's residential or commercial. It also gets back to the whole issue of annexation, as we've talked about before, and developing a even more compelling vision. And I think the recreation center can be part of that to entice some of the areas that are in these unincorporated pockets to come in And obviously, we'll work with our state legislatures to see what we can do to perhaps improve the prospects of that happening as well. So I agree with the Vice Mayor. My big concern is we've got great services. We've got great people working for this village. Our residents want that to continue. We need to start the work now to try and make sure that we're in a position to be able to do that, not just next year or the year after, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We need to lay that groundwork down. And I think if we're able to do that, then I think we will, when we're all not sitting at this table, we'll have left this place a better place than when we came, and we'll lay that framework for the future leaders of the village. So again, thank you very much. The only other question I had, Councilwoman Young mentioned the return on our investments. My concern there, and I guess there's a debate whether the inflation situation is temporary or it's going to be sustained. But as it stands right now, obviously, we're losing money. And I know we've talked about, some different avenues. I'd be interested in seeing, not immediately, but as we go forward, perhaps some other ideas about how we can invest this money without taking undue risk, but generating rates of return that hopefully come closer to at least sustaining the purchasing power of what we have, rather than having us lose ground. But again, that can be for some point in time in the future. So, Mr. Bradford, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, sir. Thomas Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta. I would like to congratulate all three of you and the department heads as well. It was an excellent presentation. I'd like to get a copy of it. I assume it's a PDF or something. I mean, a PowerPoint, but I'd love to see it. Is it going to be online at any time?
Maybe.
Maybe. But,
We'll get you a copy or we'll make it available to the
okay.
public.
I see 2 weak points in the budget that I want to share with you. One is the, let's call it, the old terminology was undesignated fund balance, and your capital improvement fund. In terms of the undesignated fund balance, I don't think 17% is enough. That's, I think, 2 months. And the minimum thinking in coastal Florida has been 25%. And I'd urge you to go there, and I'll tell you very quickly why 25%. The height of hurricane season in Florida is August 15 to September 15, the middle point being September 1. If you got hit by a major hurricane in September 1, if you've got your act together, you can probably get back up and running in 2 months. And that means come around December, Thanksgiving, or December 1, you have spent every dime you've got, and you only had 2 months of reserves, and having the third month of December would be fantastic because, or excuse me, I did my math wrong. Having 3 months of fallback that takes you to around December 1st is fantastic because, as Hugh can tell you, the biggest amounts of tax, ad valorem tax revenue come in early December because nearly everyone in Florida, in Palm Beach County, pays 100% of their property tax bill in the month of November so that they get the 4% discount. So please, I can tell you Juno Beach's reserve is 50%. Palm Beach's is somewhere between 30 and 40%. And I just think long-term you should try for 25 because your hopes of survival are better if you get there. Second concern is, I think you called it the capital improvement program, but it looked to me like almost 66% of your revenue is coming from the surtax on sales tax, and I can tell you already the head of the Palm Beach County Transportation Authority has already put his pause on that 1 cent being extended for transit, and based on my 40 years in Palm Beach County, the odds are 75% or greater. That's exactly what is going to happen. If Palm Beach County, if that government, that staff, that director allows him to say that, that means that's what they want as well, and it's likely to happen. A couple of other side comments would be, I do not find any value in Tequesta Fest. I can tell you from my own experience in Tequesta, we used to allow a carnival that would come where Tequesta Oaks is located today. That used to be a Winn-Dixie and a Lighthouse restaurant and all this other stuff. 3 days after they left the last time they were here, a child was killed and the adult seriously injured because of, I forget the specifics, it was in Orlando. And the problem with these carnivals, if you will, is that their track record for safety is not that good. Back when it was Barnum and Bailey and all the big ones, it was a whole different ballgame. But the smaller ones is a different walk in the park, if that at all. That's it, I'll just stop. Thank you.
Well-
Mayor, if you don't, I just, I won't have a conversation necessarily, but Hugh and I have talked about increasing that fund balance to something that we haven't talked about 25%. We do have $1 million that not every city does for emergency.
Right, and that was the
funds.
point I was.
That helps supplement
Yeah.
a little bit. I still think, we still feel like, raising that a little bit would be beneficial to us. Obviously, our first goal is to get back, still to
Correct.
get back, because we're not there yet. We'll see how the budget process, goes out. But I am very familiar with the whole surtax conversation. I know that it's a very popular subject around managers right now. Our ears to the grindstone, or whatever that saying is, because if that does go away, we'll have to pivot.
Right. Yeah, I was going to make the same comment. We do have an additional $1 million that we hold in reserve, call it a hurricane or emergency reserve. So there is some additional cushion, but I agree with what the manager is saying. I think as we go forward, we can look to enrich the 2-month operating policy. And like, as you said, I've heard the 1 cent sales tax discussion as well. I've had a conversation with our district commissioner on that issue. Obviously, it does have to go to referendum, and the voters will have to approve it. A big part of the reason they approved it the last time was because of the school and municipal component. I don't think it's a slam dunk that it will get approved if it's strictly transportation oriented. So, but you're right, it's something we need to obviously be aware of, which we are, and something we're going to need to take into consideration as we go forward. And I'm certainly going to make our concerns known as the manager to the proper elected officials over our concerns about that. And I'd like to see it renewed in its current form. I think that would receive strong voter support if it's schools, municipal, and a little bit of the arts. But we'll have to see how it plays itself out. Any other comments?
The only thing that
Thoughts?
I'll add real quick is I agree with Mrs. Young with regards to Remembrance Park, and I think we should look into that
Okay.
50,000. Can that be used in Tequesta Park? Nope, that's Remembrance Park. Okay.
And I think in the budget, obviously, we're going to be pursuing grants pretty aggressively, but we don't reflect any possibilities of that at this time. So we may have, I think, very limited elements of grant money in this, as I recall.
In this particular budget, we don't have a lot of grant.
Right, so if we succeed in procuring some additional grant money, that will give us some additional latitude there, so.
Didn't you have an excess of like $58,000 though, coming up in the reserve?
We're projecting to have $58,000 more at the 16% that we have right now. Obviously, that's projecting, you
Right.
budget 100%. We're hoping that our staff doesn't spend 100% of their money or 101% of their money, that they spend 99%, and we have that. So
Right.
we're projecting 58,000. However, we are going to talk about increasing that policy a little bit, and that does not take into consideration the American Rescue Fund expenditure of 1.1. I think if you put that $1.1 million in there for next year, you're looking at additional like $200,000 that we have to get to. So we're basically going to be back to I don't want to say square one, but back to like square five. We have to add another $200,000 to that fund. So you say 58,000, I see still a minus of 150,000. So I mean, we still have work to do. So while we can celebrate, maybe, but not too long. So
Yeah, we're always gonna have work to do.
That's absolutely true. Okay, do I have a motion? Council, we are heading into executive session after this, but do I have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Do I need to report this 2 cent that I just